that Mary Meyer had had a very substantial relationship with the late President Kennedy during the last 2 years of his administration.
John F. Kennedy's inner circle has been picked over for decades, but Mary Pinchot Meyer still feels like the missing chapter people argue about late at night. She was a Washington painter with a blue blood pedigree, an ex-husband deep inside the CIA, a frantic search, and a CIA counterintelligence chief who reportedly showed up fast and wanted those pages. In this video, we're going to consult best-selling author Peter Janney, a researcher with surprising personal connections to the Meyer family, to understand why so many people believe the CIA helped make Mary Meyer's diary disappear. A Georgetown woman at the center of everything.
After World War II, Mary Pinchot Meyer married Cord Meyer, who eventually became a rising star within the CIA. And Cord Meyer and my father both worked at the CIA together. My mother and Mary Meyer had gone to Vassar College. They were in the same class together. So as families, we socialized often together. We spent a lot of time together. We took trips together. And I ended up being best friends with one of the Meyer children, Michael Meyer.
Right away, author Peter Janney is telling us this story is personal. He's describing family overlap with the Meyers, which helps explain why he speaks with such conviction about what Mary may have written down and why someone might have wanted it contained. Mary Pinchot Meyer did not begin as a tabloid footnote. She grew up in a politically engaged family, moved through elite schools into early journalism work, then into the post-war Washington scene, where policy, media, and culture often blended in the same rooms. Her marriage to Cord Meyer placed her close to an intelligence world that was still opaque to most Americans, yet socially mixed with journalists and diplomats. Cord Meyer's career matters because it connects Mary to the CIA's internal culture and to names that later surface in the diary story. He became a senior figure in the agency's covert side, and later writers tie him to media influence efforts that shaped what got traction and what didn't. Even if you set bigger claims aside, his role meant Mary's circle overlapped with counterintelligence operations and high-level press. After the marriage ended, Mary's Georgetown life didn't get quiet. Accounts describe her focusing on her art, keeping to her studio, and taking long canal walks. She also remained close to friends connected to power, including James Jesus Angleton through Angleton's wife Cicely, one of Mary's closest friends. By the early 1960s, Mary's proximity to the Kennedys became part of the legend. Some sources describe her as one of JFK's lovers, and also stress she understood the world he lived in and the people around him. That mix is why the diary question keeps igniting. The Towpath murder and a case that never closed emotionally.
Mary Meyer was murdered 11 months after President Kennedy's assassination. She was shot execution style in broad daylight while she walked the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal towpath in Georgetown.
As Janney tells us, the murder itself is part of what won't let this story settle. It's the setting, the daylight, and how the case never landed with a clean ending. On October 12, 1964, Mary went for one of her midday walks along the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal towpath in Georgetown. Witness accounts say there was shouting, a cry for help, and then 2 shots separated by a brief pause. Descriptions of the wounds have fueled arguments for decades because they sound controlled and close range. Yet the scene also had chaos that doesn't fit a tidy narrative. A mechanic named Henry Wiggins reported seeing a man standing over Mary's body. Police soon found Raymond Crump Jr. nearby, wet, disheveled, and injured, and he became the central suspect. Prosecutors believed they had their man, but the case collapsed under the lack of direct physical evidence. No murder weapon was recovered despite searches, and Crump was acquitted at trial in 1965. The murder remains officially unsolved. That unresolved status is why the diary story carries so much weight. When a person this connected is killed in daylight and the case ends in an acquittal with no clear alternative suspect, attention shifts to everything around her, especially the people who knew how to keep secrets. Timing only adds to the heat. The Warren Commission's conclusions about JFK had been released weeks earlier, and multiple accounts claim Mary rejected the lone gunman conclusion. That doesn't prove anything by itself, but it helps explain why later writers cast her as a potential problem if she was writing privately and planning to speak. the diary hunt and the problem of who arrived first.
Picking up from where Leo Damour's research left off, it became clear to me that Mary Meyer had kept a diary in which she was putting the pieces of the assassination together during 1964. And one of the things that she discovered was not only was there a conspiracy to take out the sitting president in Dallas in 1963, but that there was even bigger conspiracy to cover it up in all of 1964.
Here we have Janney framing the diary as something bigger than romantic fallout. In his version, Mary is trying to connect dots, and that's why the diary becomes the object everyone argues over. The heart of the CIA destroyed the diary claim comes from the scramble after Mary's death. Most versions agree on a few basics. Mary kept a personal record, friends believed it contained sensitive material, and there was urgency to find it before police or outsiders did. Ben Bradlee, who would later run the Washington Post, was married to Mary's sister, Toni. In Bradlee's memoir account, the search begins after a call from Mary's close friend Anne Truitt in Tokyo, urging the Bradlees to find the diary quickly. Bradlee then describes entering Mary's house and finding CIA counterintelligence chief James Jesus Angleton already inside, also searching. Angleton's reputation as the locksmith makes that detail feel loaded because it suggests access and capability, not just concern. Other tellings shift the sequence. Some say the friends searched days later, some say the next day, and some claim Angleton learned of the murder remarkably fast. That timing dispute matters because it splits the story into two broad interpretations: privacy protection versus document retrieval. Then there's the question of what the diary even was. Bradlee described a small book with many pages of paint swatches and notes about color, with only a limited number of pages containing phrases about a love affair that pointed to a married, powerful man, clearly the president. Other writers insist there was a real diary, separate from an artist's sketchbook, and that the sketchbook story was a convenient cover. That distinction matters because burning a few pages of romantic writing is one thing, while destroying political talk or intelligence gossip is another. Why the CIA would want it gone, even if it was just an affair.
So when the Warren Commission report was finally released in September of 1964, Mary Meyer bought a paperback copy of the Warren Commission, read it, and was just deeply troubled by what was going on. It was at that point, I think, she made a decision that she would go public with what she knew. And it was just less than 3 weeks after the Warren Commission came out that she was murdered, execution style.
As Janney tells it, this is the hinge. Mary reads the Warren Commission, doesn't buy it, and decides she may go public. Whether you accept that conclusion or not, it's a big reason the diary is treated as more than gossip in later retellings. Even if you strip away the biggest theories, the diary still had explosive potential. A written record tying a murdered woman to a murdered president would have been humiliating for the Kennedy legacy, devastating for Mary's family, and embarrassing for friends who helped keep things quiet. It also could have pulled a lot of powerful people into testimony about who knew what and when. There's also an intelligence angle that doesn't require any JFK assassination plot. Mary had been married to Cord Meyer, and sources describe her as increasingly critical of the CIA and its covert operations. Even without operational detail, she lived among people who talked too freely. If she recorded names, habits, or sensitive gossip, that alone could trigger a containment instinct. This is where Angleton's role becomes the story's pressure point. As head of counterintelligence, he was trained to view personal vulnerabilities as security problems. Some accounts frame his involvement as protective, kept for the children, but it also keeps the document out of any official record. What we can say with confidence and what stays in the fog.
It wasn't until the late 1980s when the late author Leo Damour picked up this story again and began a serious investigation of what had happened here. And I befriended Mr. Damour in 1992, and we enjoyed a very close friendship together, and he began to share with me a number of things that he had uncovered in the case and was writing a book about it.
This is Janney explaining how he believes he got closer than most researchers. He credits Leo Damour's work, then describes a friendship where Damour shared what he believed he uncovered. That's why Janney presents his book as a continuation, not a fresh guess. The diary story persists because it has multiple witnesses, but no single timeline everyone agrees on. In one lane, you have Bradley's memoir version. The diary is located, read, handed to Angleton, and later destroyed by burning, with Bradley admitting uncertainty about what Angleton did while it was in his possession. In another lane, you have claims Angleton burned some pages but kept others, storing them for years. In yet another lane, you have authors arguing the sketchbook narrative was a ruse and the real diary's contents were more politically explosive. The CIA destruction claim usually takes the most suspicious route. Angleton retrieves the diary, uses access and skill to secure it, and ensures it can't be used in court, the press, or history. Once something is said to be burned, proof becomes nearly impossible unless a copy surfaces. At the same time, the record also supports a more mundane explanation: reputational panic. Mary's sister and brother-in-law may have believed they were protecting Mary's children from scandal and sparing the country another Kennedy disgrace so soon after Dallas. That motive can exist alongside Angleton's instinct to control sensitive documents without requiring a formal CIA operation. What remains most telling is how the diary became a missing artifact right when it could have clarified motive. If the murder was random, it might have shown what Mary feared or what she was dealing with. If it was targeted, it might have shown why. Either way, removing it from investigators guaranteed the case would drift into legend. And that's why people still ask the same question: what was in the diary and who needed it gone? Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think the push to destroy Mary Pinchot Meyer's diary was mainly about protecting JFK's reputation, or do you think it was meant to hide something bigger about the intelligence world Mary lived around? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.